Texas Democrat Al Green, who was ejected from the chamber because he had called out to the president repeatedly and did not take his seat.
And Kelly, it wasn't just politicians in attendance, of course. The Supreme Court justices were present. And I want to talk about SCOTUS. A key decision came down against the White House today. What should we know?
Well, this was brought about with respect to the president's desire to cut funding for foreign aid in the U.S. Aid Development Organization. And the court, in an unsigned, which is typical for an emergency type measure, narrowly said that the administration does not have the ability to do this. So they are putting the brakes on the president, trying to slash this foreign spending and asking the lower court to better determine what are the obligations that the United States has based on Congress appropriating money and having contracts to provide this different kind of service, whether it's food or medical aid or educational programs around the world. It's gotten a lot of attention. And right now, the Supreme Court is pumping the brakes and saying the president has exceeded his authority at this point. And so they have to go back and find out what must they deliver on those, in many cases, already paid for supplies and so forth to get them to their original destinations.
All right, Kelly O'Donnell with the latest from the White House. Thanks so much. And as we mentioned, it was a long speech last night, and President Trump made several false or misleading statements during his joint address to Congress last night. Here to fact check some of the president's remarks is NBC News senior reporter Jane Tim. So, Jane, let's get to it and start with Social Security. First, I want us to hear some of the president's remarks.
We're also identifying shocking levels of incompetence and probable fraud in the Social Security program. 3.5 million people from ages 140 to 149, and money is being paid to many of them.
All right, so Jane, what's the reality check on that?
You know, Social Security has been around for a long time, and there are millions of people in a database in Social Security that don't have death dates on them. So they seem like they're 150, 200 years old. They're not getting benefits. This is a long-known problem. Inspectors generals have pointed it out, have advocated for its change, but the Social Security Administration says it's really expensive, and since they're not doing anything with these names and numbers and Social Security numbers that are in a database somewhere, they don't see the point. They say it's just too costly for us to fix it when we need to focus on actually getting the money to the right people.
And we know President Trump ran on lowering prices. And another statement he made last night was that former President Biden is responsible for high prices. Let's listen.
Joe Biden especially let the price of eggs get out of control. The egg price is out of control, and we're working hard to get it back down.
I think some context is needed, right?
Yeah, bird flu is the context. The way you deal with bird flu is you kill a lot of hens. Less hens means less eggs, means higher prices. So while there definitely grocery prices have gone up, pointing to eggs without mentioning this really important industry issue is a little bit misleading.
And then let's talk immigration and take a listen.
Since taking office, my administration has launched the most sweeping border and immigration crackdown in American history, and we quickly achieved the lowest numbers of illegal border crossers ever recorded.
That's the claim, but what do the numbers show?
The numbers show he's right. Really low border apprehensions. The numbers appear to back him up. Experts are going to argue about whether or not it's him or conditions driving people to leave, but the numbers are low, so he gets a win right there.
All right, Jane Tim, thanks so much for that. This morning, CIA Director John Ratcliffe said the U.S. is pausing intelligence sharing with Ukraine. The Trump administration had already announced a pause in military aid to Ukraine, even as shipments of weapons and equipment were actively en route. That forced planes to turn back. This all comes as President Trump struck a more conciliatory tone toward Ukraine in his speech last night, after Ukrainian President Zelensky signaled his willingness to sign a strategic minerals and rare earth deal and begin peace negotiations. NBC News senior national security correspondent Courtney Kuby joins us now from the Pentagon. Courtney, good to see you. So explain to us the magnitude of this decision to stop sharing intelligence with Ukraine and what the broader implications could be.
Okay, so the U.S. decision to pause at this point, we don't know how long this is going to last, but to pause sharing intelligence and sending weapons and equipment to Ukraine. Yes, it has a practical impact, frankly, on the day-to-day fight there in Ukraine. But the bigger impact is really the message that this sends, not just to Ukraine, but to allies throughout Europe and particularly in Eastern Europe. Now, on a practical matter, yes, the United States was sending weapons and equipment. They were flowing things in, not at the same rate that we've seen over the last 3 years, but we found out just today from a defense official that in fact there was a shipment that was on its way to the region Monday when at 6 p.m. it was turned off because of this order to stop sending weapons and equipment, or to at least pause it. The intelligence sharing is a little bit different, though, Clay, because while the United States may be pausing providing information directly to Ukraine, the U.S. is still sharing intelligence with close allies, and that information still is making its way to Ukraine. And in addition to that, a lot of those allies, frankly, have better intelligence about Russia and about what's happening in Ukraine than the United States does. So the big question now is, if the United States is pausing it to Ukraine, is Ukraine also pausing that same intelligence sharing back to the United States? Remember, they have a lot of information about Russia that is useful to the United States as well.
That's a good point, Courtney. Is there a sense of how long both these pauses might last?
Not at all. I mean, frankly, a lot of these decisions that we've been hearing about just in the last several days, there's one school of thought that they will only occur during the negotiations. We're getting some of those signals from the administration, but no one that we are speaking with is giving us any kind of a real signal, a real confident signal that if in fact the United States signs this minerals deal with Ukraine and the relations get back on track, that the weapon shipment or the intelligence sharing will suddenly restart.
Courtney QB at the Pentagon. Thanks so much. Let's turn now to some consumer news. Disney is making major staffing cuts, and the